Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Lady Freethinker's Activists in Action interview series. I'm Nina Jackel, founder of Lady Freethinker. We're a nonprofit media organization dedicated to exposing and stopping suffering of animals, humans, and the planet. Today, we are excited to speak with Jill Robinson. She's the founder and CEO of Animals Asia, working to end cruelty and restore respect for all animals throughout Asia. Based in Hong Kong, Jill works toward ending the farming of bears for bile in Vietnam and China, providing sanctuary for bears, ending the suffering of wild animals in captivity, and ensuring humane treatment of dogs and cats. Jill, before we get started, did I miss anything, or would you like to share a bit more on your background?
Gosh, Nina, no, I don't think so. I would actually just like to pay credit to the huge number of staff that work for this organisation today. You make it sound like a one-man band, and it most certainly isn't. We are blessed to have amazing teams in, China, Vietnam, and offices in the US, in the UK. Gosh, in Germany and Australia. So this is very much Animals Asia family.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And that's fantastic that you have such a broad reach and a lot of amazing people working to help animals. So, for those who aren't familiar with your organization, can you explain why you decided to found Animals Asia and what your main areas of focus are?
Well, very simply, I decided to found Animals Asia after having quite a special moment with a bear on a bear bile farm many, many years ago, way back in 1993. And it was just when I was doing an investigation of these farms and walking around one of these terrible places. It was almost like a dungeon area, and seeing bears in cages. And as I was walking around, I obviously backed too closely towards a cage, and I jumped up in fright as I felt something touch my shoulder. And as I turned round, there was a bear with her paw through the bars of the cage. And I did the most ridiculously stupid thing I've ever done in my life. Her paw was there, and it was just sort of asking me to take it. And I would never do that today. We know bears very, very well today, having rescued over 600 of them. But it just seemed like she was just pleading from the bars of her cage. And I took her paw, and she just squeezed my fingers. She could have really hurt me very, very badly, and she didn't. She just squeezed my fingers. And I just knew then that everything about my life had changed. And she was the catalyst for starting the foundation all those years ago. And I've never looked back. So yeah, yeah.
That's an amazing story. It's very brave of you, but the bear must have sensed that you were kind and there to help. Um, so for people who aren't familiar with the bear bile industry, can you just explain what a bear bile farm is and what happens to the bears there?
Well, there's over 10,000 bears now being farmed across Asia, and bear farming began in the 80s as a means to so-called protect bears in the wild by keeping them in cages rather than killing them in the wild for their whole gallbladders. So these animals can be kept incarcerated for anything up to 30 years of their life in cages that will eventually become their coffins, of course. They are there to have their bile milked from their gallbladders, which is then used in traditional medicine. And while we know that bear bile does work, we know that it can also be replaced by synthetics and by herbal alternatives. I think for anyone sort of being quite scathing about the use of bile, what I should say is that in countries across the world, bile is actually synthesized, not from bears, but it's synthesized so that it can be used by the ton again in countries across the world to cure chronic liver complaints and other diseases. So it has had a fundamental place in traditional pharmacopoeia. But again, the fact is that no one is going to die for the lack of bear bile itself. You can take synthetics, you can take herbal alternatives. But in the meantime, as I say, these bears are lying in tragic conditions on farms across Asia. And this is Animals Asia's cause, if you like, to help them as much as we can and end the cruelty.
Well, that's fantastic. It sounds like the bears really need your help. Um, and beyond Animals Asia, you've been involved with animal activism for many years. Can you please share some of your most memorable or moving experiences?
Well, in the years that we've developed, we've We've built two award-winning sanctuaries, one in Vietnam and one in China, and we've rescued over 600 bears. And these are animals that just, I think, bring us to our knees with the sheer stoic natures and the forgiveness of their hearts. I mean, I don't think we could be so forgiving if we were treated in quite the same way. You know, bear bar farming causes their bodies to have such horrific injuries. You know, many of them have their teeth smashed away. Every single bear that we have rescued, every single bear will die at the end of their days as a result of the chronic trauma, physically and psychologically, that they've suffered on bear bar farms across Asia. So, you know, we have disabled bears, we have bears missing limbs, we have blind bears, we have bears with, you know, chronic mobility problems. I mean, the list just goes on and on. You know, many of our bears will die of liver cancer, again, as a result of the surgical mutilation that they've received on these farms. So, you know, it's a long, long journey, both for the bears into recovery and from us as a team to be able to celebrate, you know, the healing of these incredible stoic animals. And I think, you know, always, you know, as anyone that even, you know, has a cat or a dog, you know that sometimes that your heart lies with their individual stories, you know, and that's what can help sometimes the whole species. And one bear that was very close to my heart was a bear called Oliver. And he was rescued in 2010 from an illegal bear bile farm in China. And he had been caged for 30 years of his life. And bears really only live up to 30 years. So, you know, we had a very, very old bear on our hands. And as we were you know, we had him on the truck in a rescue cage. We were driving towards our sanctuary in Chengdu. It was about a 3-day journey. And Oliver began to display the signs of being very, very, very sick indeed. And our vet team was so worried that they knew that they wanted to perform abdominal surgery along the road for this bear. Now, in the middle of all this, we got stuck in a traffic jam as well in the middle of China. And, you know, we just reached out. We reached out to the police and to the highway patrol, and we reached out to the local hospital and, you know, even the general public. And it was just this time where everybody came together as guardian angels. The highway patrol just cleared the road for us to somehow get out of this traffic jam that we had been in for hours. And the police helped us, and then we called the hospital, and they were standing by as maybe about 2 hours later we drove into this Chinese hospital, and the doctors were standing there with oxygen tanks and medications that we needed, and, you know, scrub tops and everything, so that our team could perform major abdominal surgery on this bear. And it was the most remarkable time. And this is just an example. I just want to say for people listening that, you know, maybe so, you know, I don't know, cynical perhaps about China and Vietnam and the countries we work in, saying people there don't care about animals. It's our job to say, of course they care about animals. You know, it's the same as in every country in the world. You have some people that do and some people that don't. But those that do, you know, just form together and just, you know, help in terms of conservation and welfare wherever they can. And this is what we found with Oliver. You know, his life was saved because of those people, and he went on to live another 4 years with us. And he was a broken bear that got mended, and it was the most beautiful thing for us to be a part of that rescue, and to know, you know, that citizens of China just rose up as they did and helped us.
Oh, that's amazing to hear that so many people came together to save this bear's life. That's a really touching story.
Well,
And
we have now a program. It's called Oliver's Army, so that anyone can join Oliver's Army, because he died a few years ago. So in his memory, we started this for him, so that, you know, people that just really wanted to join this courageous movement of helping bears in Vietnam and China, you know, can join with Animals Asia under the banner of Oliver's Army.
yeah, no, that's fantastic. And that actually brings me to the next question, and that is, what's in store for you and Animals Asia, and what's the best way for people to follow your work?
Thank you so much, Nina. Well, clearly, if people can go onto our website, check us out, or get in touch, you know, with our offices. We've got an office in the US. We're very easy to find, and you know, it's just down to the fact that we need more and more people to help us than ever before, because we're just embarking on. You know, we've been in Vietnam for many years now. We have a beautiful sanctuary there in the Tamdao National Park in the north of the country. But the most exciting of all is that in 2017 we signed an agreement with the Vietnamese government to bring bear bar farming to an end by the year 2022. And hand in hand with that, we also signed an agreement with the Traditional Medicine Association in Vietnam of about 60,000 members for them to never prescribe or sell bear bile ever again from the year 2020. So with those two things in hand, we are embarking now on the biggest campaign of our life to, rescue every single bear. It's about 600 bears out there to help them as and however we can, build 2 more sanctuaries at least that we've got to do there, and just raise as much money as we can to be able to do that and relegate this awful industry to the history books of shame. So, if any of your audience, are encouraged by what they hear, please reach out and help us, because we have never needed this help more. And if we can wake up, one day and say, my gosh, we've achieved what we were founded for as Animals Asia, and if our supporters can wake up and say we were part of this historic movement to end bear farming, then this is something I think that would sit just so wonderfully with us and give everybody inspiration to keep moving on with animal welfare programs across the world.
Well, yeah, it's amazing how far you've come, and the progress is, or the future is looking really good for the bears thanks to your work. And I know that our readers will want to support you because they care about what happens to the bears, and it's fantastic that there's actually an end in sight. So thank you for that. And that was my last question. So I just want to thank you for sharing your time with us today. We really love everything that you're doing and look forward to continuing to follow your journey and seeing what happens to the bears, what the next steps are. For those watching, thank you for checking out this episode of Lady Freethinker's Activists in Action series. Be sure to check out our other videos in the series and stay tuned for other episodes. For more information on our organization, please visit ladyfreethinker.org or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Lady Freethinker.